Hello, welcome to Record Time. Record Time is a weekly Akashic experience where we explore simple and mysterious themes through the lens of the Akashic Records. If you're new here, welcome. If you're an old friend, welcome back. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me here. If you're unsure what the Akashic Records are, I invite you to check out my website, minaruchi.com. And there I have videos explaining all about what the records are, what a reading is. There's lots of Akashic goodness waiting for you there, including a free guided visualization channeled from the records. So that's a fun place to explore if you're curious. But for right now, I invite you to just take this moment to settle into wherever you are. If it's safe, and only if it's safe and accessible, you can close your eyes. And just feel yourself literally land where you are. Notice the points of contact that you have with the ground or whatever surface you're resting on, standing on, sitting on. And just feel your weight drop into that a little bit more. Feeling solid in whatever shape your body is in right now. Feeling it land down. Into right now, right here, where you are. Okay, so the records are sharing. Your creative power is there if you want it. And this seems like it might expand a little bit on last week's transmission, on last week's episode. So we'll see where this goes. But they're saying again, your creative power is there for you if you want it. And this feels like a literal open invitation. Like you can imagine like your creative power just sitting there, like ready for you to pick it up and claim it and take it and have it and engage with it, play with it. And this is such an interesting like image and idea of like, oh, your creative power is just sitting there. And maybe you're listening to this and you're already like holding it and engaging with it, and this isn't you've already accepted the invitation perhaps. And yet, like, to think about this, like, my creative power is sitting there. If I want it, it's there. What does that mean? What are they even saying? But what this is evoking is like, it's a choice to engage with your creative power. It's in you. It's there with you. If you want it, you can use it. But you have to decide to use it. And this is something that you can choose to engage with moment to moment, right? And that is like how you can play with creativity moment to moment. That's how life moves, is moment to moment. But you can also think of it as like an overarching kind of like way of being. How do you be in relation to your creativity? How do you and your creativity engage with life? And so you can reflect on this at different scales, in the micro, moment to moment, and just overall, like, do I engage my creative power regularly? And when they say creative power, it's like It's all of the ways that you are able to meet life. There are certainly things out of your control. There are things that like the universe is taking care of and that are just not in your realm of control. But there are things in your capacity that you can choose. You choose how you show up to life. And it's with that, it's like, what energy, what like intentionality are you bringing to life when things happen? And just as even when things aren't happening, it's just like, how do you move through life? Are you moving forward or moving through life with this sense of engaging your own creative power? Like, I can make some stuff happen. And that might feel, people have different perspectives on making things happen, but really like creating things, like making something, you are making things happen, you're engaging with life, right? And it's in how you spend your time, it's in how you like interact with people, it's in how you like take care of yourself and the people around you. There's like endless avenues for creative expression, but this inquiry is, okay, am I engaging with this? And one thing to reflect on, it's not just like, oh, how am I spending my time? Like, is my job an outlet for creative expression? It's more like, yeah, let me see how I can put words to this. It's almost like noticing where you've accepted a framework that you didn't design, but also that wasn't explicitly imposed on you. I'll just let that land for a second, because that might have been abstract. I don't know. I don't know how that landed for you, but if you think about this, it's almost like creativity, thinking about creativity and constraints together is an interesting kind of contemplation. And when I was in school, like creativity was like a central part of the conversation a lot of time. We were making things all the time, designing things. And if you have like an art assignment, for example, and there's no instructions, there's no framework, there's no rules, it's actually really hard to make something. If someone just says, turn in an art, you have a week. Or maybe they don't even say you have a week, because that would be a constraint, but it's just like, turn in an art, whatever that is. It could be a painting, it could be a sculpture, it could be a drawing, it could be whatever, it could be a poem, it could be a song, it could be a dance, it could be like miming something, whatever. It's like, well, what do I do with that? There's no constraints. And so some creative constraints are actually really helpful. Having some kind of framework of like, okay, how much time am I going to give myself? Or how, like, what medium am I going to use? And this is just in this example of an artwork, right? What medium am I going to use? What, how much time am I giving myself, or is being given to me? What is the theme? Like, is this like a portrait? Is this a still life painting? Like, what are we doing here? What's the like intention of this? What are we trying to communicate here? Having some constraints actually helps creativity flow sometimes. And yet, if you have too many constraints, too many rules, you begin to box the creativity in. There's kind of like, you're narrowing down the possibilities too much and you're shrinking what's available. But having like a channel, a framework for creativity to flow through is helpful. Having too rigid of a framework or a channel is when it starts to squash creativity, and then you end up just with one result, right? If the assignment gets too constrained, it's like, okay, you have to do it on like a piece of paper this size. Everyone uses the same paper. Everyone uses the same 3 colors, and everyone paints the same image. You're copying an image, right? You're going to have still, there could be actually really diverse results, but it's constraining the creative possibility there, constraining the creative power of the individual there. And so the inquiry that the records are like just inviting is, where in your life have you taken on constraints that were never there? Where in your life are you following rules that were never explicitly made or communicated? And this is like a really subversive, cheeky, kind of like internal revolutionary act in itself. It can be, at least, where it's like noticing what constraints, what limitations are actually there in my life. Okay, I have to go to my job. That's a thing that I must do, right? Maybe you can't change that. We don't all have the ability to change that at the drop of a hat. So maybe that's a constraint that's there. But inside that, it's like, what other rules? Like, that's a real constraint, but what are other constraints that aren't actually there, that you're just operating within, that are containing your creativity? And that could be as simple as like, everyone in the office uses the same desk setting. Everyone has a sit-stand desk, but no one actually uses the standing option because everyone just sits. So it's like, that's just a rule, maybe a social cue that's not actually there. So, and that's like a weird example. But you could probably think of better examples in your actual life than I can. So, but it's just like thinking about this, like, what are rules or patterns or like grooves that you're falling into, these channels, constrained channels that you have just fallen into that were never really required, that weren't actual rules or constraints. And when they say your creative power is there for you if you want it, it's like the ability to notice what constraints are there and immovable right now. What are the constraints that are there that you can't control, that are going to be there? And what are the ones that aren't there, that you can actually like dissolve with your like magical gaze, creative power? Let those dissolve, and giving yourself space to open up so your creativity isn't constrained too tight. It's like, okay, which are the rules that aren't there that can actually create more space for me to move? And which ones are there that are actually going to help me channel my creativity within these like helpful creative constraints? So the goal isn't to have no rules and to just have endless whatever in every direction. It's like, it's fine to have some constraints. Life is giving you creative constraints with the things that you can't control. But to notice, almost with like a little rebellious spark, a rebellious twinkle in your eye, where are the rules that have just been accepted? Unspoken rules that aren't really there, that actually are flexible, that actually have free space to move. They're not actually holding back your creative power, your capacity to meet life in an interesting, unique, creative way. Okay, that's where I'm going to leave you for today. I would love to know. Please send me a message on this. Please leave a comment on this. I'm so curious. What are the creative constraints? What are those like secret, not real rules that you've fallen into? As you contemplate this, as it becomes clear, list them, put them in the comments. You could help people recognize these like fake rules that aren't really there. So if anything comes to you, share it, send me a message, put it in a comment, support the community and the other people watching this, because this could really help someone by sharing it. If you can see what are the rules that aren't really there, that can help your creativity expand. Okay, I am wishing you well until next time. Namaste.